Hi, everybody. I want to spend a little time today just kind of talking about Mary. She's the woman of the hour, it seems like, especially for Christians, but not only for Christians. She is also venerated in Islam, and she was recognized as a faithful Jewish woman. I think a lot of I came to understand Mary during a time in my life, in my 20s and 30s, when I was really exploring goddess worship and the feminine, divine. And imagine my surprise to learn that Mary was there, because for many of us who do come from a Christian tradition, especially a Protestant Christian tradition, there's not a lot that's made of Mary, unlike in some of the other Christian denominations. So it was a surprise to me, a very pleasant surprise. And then I ran across a friend of mine, and maybe you're even watching now, I'm not sure, who lives in California, but we were working at a women's music festival together. Definitely, she was a post-Christian kind of gal. She had been greatly hurt by the church and wanted nothing to do with it. And but she was very artistic, creative, wonderful gal, still is. And she came back one summer with, she always had a lot of tattoos, and this one summer she came back with a huge back piece that filled her entire back, and it was of Mary. And I said, so-and-so, Mary's on your, Mary, what is this with Mary? And she goes, Mary's got my back. And I thought to myself, Mary is such a wonderful person. And I think she really has a lot to teach us right now at this time when we are struggling, as we are in our culture, to know who we are and to live in chaos, and for many of us to feel, who are feeling put upon is not the right term, but at odds, like things are not gelling, just the chaos is overwhelming. And so I want to talk about Mary. The social implications of her, for one thing, are amazing. She was probably 14 when she was pregnant and delivered Jesus. She was an unwed mother. She was betrothed, but in those days, if you were pregnant and betrothed, it was the same as committing adultery, and she had not yet wed. So she was caught between a rock and a hard place there. Thank goodness for Joseph, bless his heart, because he could have had her stoned as an adulteress. A lot of similarities, a lot of examples that we can find in our own culture today of unwed pregnancies in teenagers. And in her case, she was forced to leave her country, at least according to the Gospel of Matthew, for the protection of her child. I think about all of the people who are coming to our borders now, who are coming just with the hope of a better life for their families, for their children. Think of how bad things must be for them, where they were coming from, in order to make this journey, especially with little children. Mary was brave, a lot of courage. She was really at risk in so many avenues of her life. Another thing that's important to remember is that she gave consent. She gave consent to bear this child. That's what the angel Gabriel came to ask, and she is the one who said, if it be thy will. Humble, but incredibly strong, and that's what I need to remember right now. Maybe you do too. Here she was living under an occupied army, watching her son, supporting her son, who she knew was special. I'm not sure she recognized what was going to happen to him until towards the end of his ministry. But even then, she was one who stood at the foot of the cross, or within sight of the cross, and watched her son be tortured and die. And what strength that takes. I think about all of the mothers, especially mothers of color, who are having to deal with their sons and daughters being killed now. There's a lot to teach us today in Mary. She had very little control over anything except for this act of defiance, this act where she said, I will exercise control over that part of my life that I can. Terrible times, but she was adamant in her faith. And because of that, she steered a course that is still helping many of us to steer our course today. So I invite you to read up on her a little bit. Maybe sit down in your meditation and just talk with her. I'm sure she can find something to relate to you about this time of light as we lead up to the celebrations that come later in December. I lift up to us and for your consideration, Mary.